In this video series, we're going to work on your bar chord knowledge and your bar chord technique. People have been asking me to make a bar chord training series for ages and ages. We finally got around to it. This is going to be absolutely value packed and you're going to get a lot out of this training series. Let's dive in. Okay, first of all, what is a bar chord? Well, broadly in the guitar chord world, there's two types of chords. We have open chords, which are things like C, G, D, E minor, all the stuff that you learn down here at the bottom end of the neck. Anything that has an open string in, that's when we play a string that we don't fret. So if we just hear a string ring out, so in a C chord, for example, we play here and here and here, but the third string is open. We play that without fretting down on it, so we call that open. So they're open chords. Bar chords is when we apply a bar behind the chord and then we make the chord in front of the bar. A bar chord is a fixed movable shape that you can move up and down the neck to make loads of different chords with only one chord shape. So you hold one shape with your hand, but you can hear, many different chords. This is amazing. This is so cool because it means that if you can just learn a couple of hand positions, you can essentially play any chord. This is a huge time saver. So to give you an example of this, if we hold an E chord down here, so this is an open chord, this is E major. But if we apply the bar there, it becomes F. So can you see how this hasn't changed? These three fingers are still the same. E. If we move it up and we put the bar down, it becomes an F. If we move it up more, it becomes a G. Then an A. B, C, C sharp, D, and so on and so on. But you can see that these fingers didn't change. The only thing that changed was where I applied that shape on the fretboard. So the pitch changed, the pitch went up and down, but the nature of the chord stayed the same all the time. It was a major chord, it was quite bright and happy. Now broadly, there's 5 different types of bar chord that we can play. Let's jump over to the iPad and I'll explain it to you in a bit more detail. There's 5 types of bar chord: C, A, G, E, and D. Now the one I just showed you a moment ago was using an E shape, but we can also make bar chords out of C shapes, A shapes, G shapes, and D shapes. But by far the most used are E shapes and A shapes. These two, they account for, I would say, for most guitarists, 90 to 95% of all bar chords are played using A and E shapes. So these are the ones that you have to get under your belt. The C, the G and the D are more advanced, and whilst we do use them, they're not used anywhere near as much as the A and E's. If I had to rank them in order of how often they're used, I would say E and A shapes are used the most, and then D shapes are the next used, C's the next, and G shapes aren't really used that often. So that's what the whole picture looks like, but really all I want you to worry about, certainly in this video, we're going to just focus on E shapes, and in the next video we'll focus on A shapes. So there's 5 types of bar chords: C shapes, A shapes, G shapes, E shapes, and D shapes. In this video, we're going to focus on E shapes. Let's do a super quick whistle-stop tour of all of the most common E-shaped chord voicings. Okay, first of all, here's major. Big and bright and happy and optimistic. And that's obviously based off an E major chord down here. Okay, the next one is minor. So we just remove this finger and that gives us a minor shape. Dark, mysterious. Let's look at a 7th shape. Yeah, quite bluesy. Okay, next let's look at a minor 7 shape. So for this one, we can move this finger away. We can use 2 fingers now to make the bar. We're only pressing down 1 string here. Yeah, interesting chord voice in that particular version of a minor 7 chord. It's got a little low end in it. Quite heavy compared to other minor 7 chord voicings. Okay, next let's look at a major 7 voicing. So now this is a kind of rich, creamy, sort of jazzy chord. got a lovely tone to them, major sevens. Very, very rich. Okay, and lastly, just for fun, let's look at 3 more advanced chord voicings. Now, if you're just a beginner, just completely, like, don't worry about this. I don't want you to get bogged down in really advanced chords. But if you're more of an intermediate player, then these ones are really useful to know. Okay, first of all, we're going to look at an augmented chord shape. So for this, we only play strings 6, 5, 4, and 3. We tend to use augmented chords. I think in popular music, they're not used very much at all. But we tend to use them after a major chord, so it would sound something like this. Then you would switch to the augmented chord. And then, you know, wherever we go next is where we go. Something like that would be nice. Maybe to a D chord. Okay, and this is the diminished chord voicing using an E shape. Very dark, very mysterious. And lastly, let's look at a minor 7 flat 5. So we usually use these as passing chords to something else. So the shape looks like this, really unusual shape. Again, quite jazzy, quite, you know, thoughtful. They're best used, I think, as passing chords. So if you're going between A major, or whatever chord you're playing, to its relative minor, like F sharp minor. So if you're going between 2 chords like that, then it's really nice to touch on the minor 7 flat 5 on the way. Touch on it. And on the way back. It works in either direction. Okay, I hope you enjoyed just seeing those chord voicings there. You'll find a PDF that summarizes all of those chord shapes on the page, so you can download that, print it off, keep it, you know, in your practice space, or, you know, with your guitar, play around with those chord shapes. You know, some of them are very, very common. Yeah, the majors, the minors, we use them all the time. Some of them are a little bit less common. The 7s, the minor 7s, the major 7s, a bit less common, but still they crop up all the time in popular music. And then there's 3 in there that were quite niche and aren't used that often in popular music. The augmented, the diminished, and the minor 7 flat 5. But it's still really cool to explore those more advanced shapes and unusual sounds. I'd like to come back now, come down a couple of levels, because some of the stuff that we shared there is quite advanced. And what I'd like to do is discuss some ways that we can make it easy to learn bar chords. So if you are a beginner guitarist who is struggling to learn bar chords, then I want to make it clear to you how you get from open chords to bar chords. Now let's be clear, the challenge of learning bar chords, I think, is the toughest challenge that people face when they're learning the guitar. But the reward, once you get to the other side of the hurdle, is enormous. You know, the whole of the guitar neck opens up to you. And I think that's when you can call yourself an intermediate guitarist, actually. Once you've learned bar chords, I think you're not a beginner anymore, you're not a novice. You know, you can kind of say, I am a guitarist. You know, you've made it in one sense. You never stop learning, of course, but bar chords is an important threshold to cross. So how do we get there with the minimum amount of frustration? Well, I like people to use power chords as stepping stones to get to full bar chords. Now, a power chord is basically a bar chord. It's like the lower half of a bar chord. So a power chord looks like this. Now we only play here, here, and here. And again, it's a movable shape, so you can play it anywhere you want to. But if we play it like this, then can you see how what we're playing there is, if I play a full bar chord, yeah, so, but we're taking away the bar at the bottom here, and we're taking away this finger as well. So in theory, yeah, I could just kind of lift my hand away, because we only play those 3 strings. Yeah. Now we tend to use power chords. They tend to be most used in sort of rock and pop, but they're used in all genres of music. Another name for power chords is fifths, because all that's in there is a root note and a fifth note. And you can actually play a power chord just with 2 fingers like this. Yeah. Now I like people that are trying to learn bar chords to start by learning power chords, because it starts to get that stretch that you need between this finger and this finger. Yeah, and that's what we want. But what it does is it allows you to focus on only the stretch and not the bar. So you're not having to, like, you know, clamp your fingers down and make the chord shapes here. What we're doing is we're turning the journey of learning bar chords into micro steps. And the first small step is, well, okay, let's get used to this weird shape before we start adding on more parts to that weird shape. Now, the cool thing about power chords is because they have no third, there's only a root and a fifth in there. That's the root, that's the fifth. And if we add that one, that's just the octave of that. They're the same note here and here. But so because there's no third, that means it can't be major or minor. So this is really cool because it means the shape is very portable. It's easy to move around. It's something that you can, you know, play in all genres with every chord. Like, you don't need to even think about whether it's major or minor. You just need to move your finger to the right place and it will sound okay. Let's look at a couple of power chord songs that you could have some fun with. So one will be Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, which we play down here. Now, can you see what I did there? I moved the power chord shape from there to there. And that's the other cool thing about power chords. It works on these strings and here. Move up to the 4th fret. Yeah, and continue to whack the strings as you change. Can you hear that sound? That kind of gives you a kind of percussive element. That's a nice one to practice because it gets you moving around the fretboard. What I'd like you to do is, any song that you already know, I'd like you to start trying to play using power chords. Because remember, you can use power chords, which are also called fifths. You can use fifths and power chords, they're the same thing. You can use them to play any song. Okay, now it's time to discuss some specific bar chord technique tips and ideas. So if you're struggling with bar chords, what I want is to share a handful of ideas that I know work, that make the biggest difference to people that are struggling with bar chords. These are things that I've taught to people for years and years. They're things that I've figured out that people struggle with, and maybe not all of these things I share will work for you, but I guarantee there'll be at least one that kind of clicks for you when you explore that. So if your bar chords aren't quite as clean as you want them to be, then hopefully one of these tips is going to work for you. Okay, tip number one is make sure that your wrist is further forward than you're used to playing with open chords. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is they're used to playing, you know, like they might play a C shape like this, and then a G shape like this, a D shape like this. If you look at my forearm there, then you'll see that my forearm, if I'm playing a G shape, a D, a C, it's quite close to the neck a lot of the time. But when we play bar chords, we have to move our wrist forwards. A lot of people don't do that. They keep their wrist back here, and then they try and make the bar chord shapes like this, and they don't have enough reach. You have to bring your thumb down and move your wrist forwards. That's what gives you the reach. So if you look at my hand there, as I'm playing those shapes, can you see, like, there's not much of my wrist, or, you know, if you look at my thumb, there's not much behind the neck there. Most of it is in front of the guitar, and that's what we need, because that's what gives you the reach that you need to stretch out for those bar chords. Okay, next of all, make sure that you're pushing forwards with your thumb. Now, a lot of people, when they make a bar chord shape, they're great at pulling back with their fingers, like they'll pull back this way. But a lot of the time people don't push forwards with their thumb. Remember that you're trying to make a clamp here, so you need to push from both directions. Pushing forwards with your thumb means you have to push back less with your fingers. So if you can more evenly distribute that clamp, then a lot of people find that really tightens up the bar chords for them. Okay, next it's about your finger position, your first finger. Now I'm going to come in close here. I'm trying to film this from my perspective so you can see clearly. Now, what a lot of people think you need is for this finger to be really straight on the neck like this. But that's not how we actually play. When we play bar chords, our finger is ever so slightly curved, and also, can you see it's ever so slightly rotated? Now, it's not on its side. That's not what we're trying to do. What we are trying to do is just, it's not like this, it's like this. It's just rolled back ever so slightly. So we're playing the shape here with these fingers, but all I want you to look at here is this finger. Now I hope you can see that that is just ever so slightly rolled back and slightly curved. Remember, when you make a bar, you only, if we're playing a major bar, which we are right now, then you only need to touch this string here and then the bottom two, yeah? These three fingers here are playing those three strings, so you don't need to bar them. We don't need to press down all 6 strings like this when these 3 are already being pressed ahead. Pressing behind them is completely redundant. We don't need that. And that's one of the things that makes it much easier to play, is you realize like, right, okay, cool. I don't need to apply pressure in the middle of the bar. I actually just need to apply pressure at the top and the bottom of the bar. Okay, my next tip is to raise your index finger up. Now this doesn't work for everyone. The anatomy of people's fingers is quite different from person to person. But a lot of the time when people are making bar chord shapes, the string that gets deadened is often this one here. And we get that nasty sort of thunk thunk sound. Yeah? But to avoid that from happening, if you just raise your finger up a bit, it feels a bit weird at first, but what happens is it means that you're pressing down on that string with the more bony part of your finger, like here, instead of this fleshy, squishy bit here. This bit here is harder. You can feel there's more bone there, there's a bit more flesh here. So if you just raise your index finger up, it means that you've got a harder surface to actually press onto that string. Again, that doesn't work for everybody because everyone's hand size is different, but it does work for a lot of people and it tightens things up a lot. When you make minor chord shapes here, or a minor 7 shape here, then make sure that this finger, which is now free, is being used to strengthen the bar there. It makes it much, much easier to play. Make sure that when you're playing that you give your hands a break. You don't need to hold the bar all of the time. When you're playing, a lot of people when they move to a bar chord, they think they have to just hold it tight for the whole time that they're playing. But that's not the case. We relax and tighten the clamp all the time when we're playing. If I'm playing a chord progression that goes from G to C, then when I play the G, I often go like this. So watch my hands carefully here. I'll play, but then I'll just relax. Can you just see that movement in my fingers? I stay in contact with the strings. Yeah, I don't take my hand away, but just that moment there, and I'll often do that. All guitarists do that because it creates rhythm, it creates rise and fall in the music. Now watch my hand carefully here. Can you see that? Now I hope you can see that there's lots of times there that I was just relaxing my grip. Now of course you can't do that on every single song you play. It depends what the vibe, the genre, the mood of the song is. But pretty much any song that you play, there are moments where you can relax your hand like that. And a lot of the time, there's moments where you want to relax your hands like that because it makes what you play more musical and interesting. But also, all those little breaks, they allow your hand to relax. So if you feel like your hand's getting fatigued from making all of these bar chord shapes, then a lot of the time, that's all you need to do. You know, just take a few tiny little breaks along the way by just relaxing the grip. A lot of the time, we'll do that to tighten up the chord shape. So if we don't quite land it exactly, then very soon after that you just get there and then tidy up the shape when you get there. You know, as long as we hear that root note, you can get away with a lot of things going wrong further down as long as you land the root note first. Wherever you're going, remember, look ahead to the chord change before you play it. If you're going from G to C, as soon as you get the G right, your eyes should be looking at where the C is going to be. So your hand's down here playing the G, but your eyes are already looking here at the C because you know that's your destination, that's your target for the next move. Now I don't know why that works, but I just know that it does, and that I see a marked improvement in our students immediately when they start looking ahead to the new chord before they get there. I think it just gives you like, I don't know, a split second of time to prepare and for your, your hand-eye coordination to align so you can land the change more smoothly. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. I've thrown a lot at you, I know, but I wanted to make sure that you get as much as you can out of this, free training series. Whether you buy our courses or join us or not, I want to help you. Our mission is to spread the gift of music far and wide. So I hope you've got a lot out of what we've gone through today. Okay, lastly, I wanted to share some of our students' tips. So what do guitarists who have recently learned how to play bar chords, what are their best tips for people who are a little bit behind them in the learning journey? I actually asked this in our Facebook group just the other day. So for our students, there is a private Facebook group where they can speak, speak to one another, get questions answered by me and my team. And so I asked people in there the other day, hey, what were the main breakthroughs when you were learning bar chords? Could you share them with us, please? Let's look at a few of them now. Okay, so I asked this question in our Facebook group. Quick question. What was the most helpful thing you learned or did to succeed with bar chords? For example, was there an aha moment or a particular technique you learned that helped you with bar chords? Please share your biggest breakthrough and why it worked so well for you. I ask because I'm filming our new course, Bar Chord Secrets, and would love to have a section where I share all your best advice for other guitar learners who are struggling with bar chords. I've got tons of cool stuff in here already, but I'd love to hear what you personally would say to a fellow guitarist who is struggling with bar chords. So what's your best tip or piece of advice? Thank you. All right, and we got loads of replies here with different ideas from people. It's just absolutely brilliant. The community of people in this Facebook group are just incredible. They're so helpful and supportive. So Becky said she hasn't mastered it yet, but the tip of extending her index finger over the fretboard so that the bony part is down has lessened the muffing on the strings. That's a good word, muffing, closest to the high E. Yeah, nice. Okay, continued strengthening of that finger will give me a pure bar chord. Yes, Becky, love it. So yeah, I think we covered that one, was just raising your finger up a bit higher so as that the bony part presses down on the string. Christopher Grove said he didn't avoid them. I think people scare themselves before trying. That's definitely true. Some people kind of psych themselves out about bar chord. They just decide at the outset that they're never going to be able to play them. I don't hit them perfect every time, but if they are in a song, I'm going to play them. Nice, love that attitude. Go for it. Michael Caine said, I think the best thing I learned about bar chords that helped me get solid with them were two things I learned from you. Firstly, to put your finger above the E string. Secondly, to curve your finger. Both techniques gave me more comfort and strength to produce good bar chords. Thanks. Mark Gould, chose songs that had a bar chord in and applied a 3-to-1 ratio. So for every three chords that he practiced in a song or part of a song, with an easy way of playing said bar chord, I would attempt it with a full bar chord. Nice. Rob, now some great tips here from Rob. He took his acoustic guitar into a shop, different than I had been using last week. Did not feel like the big box guitar store was listening to me. Didn't like how my Fender sounded after playing for the last couple of months. Now this is the useful bit. The small shop, so he went to basically an independent guitar shop, and they very wisely suggested that he put lighter gauge strings on the guitar. Notice that it was extra light. It wasn't just light, extra light. That's the best gauge strings to use when you're learning guitar. And they lowered the action on the acoustic. So this makes it easier to press down the strings. Brilliant tip from Rob. One that I would never have thought of, but he's absolutely right. That works really well. They charged him $21 for the labour and the strings, about $20 less from the big box store. And that helped tremendously. Not only does my guitar sound brighter because it's got the new strings on, it plays better because the action has been lowered. After 5 minutes, I was able to not only play a successful barred F, but I could move it and still play correctly. Also, it's easier for me to fret and then bar. Nice, so we can switch in between open chords and bar chords more easily because he's got lighter gauge strings, which are easier to press down. And with the action lowered, it's even easier to press down. My fingers just will not spread the right way if I bar first. Still tough to do, but I'm getting better at it. Brilliant, brilliant. Great comment there from Rob. Okay, and then there's loads of other comments in here, but I don't want to go through them all in this video. I just wanted to give you a flavour of, what's going to be inside the Bar Chord Secrets course. We go through all of these comments in more detail, but also I wanted to give you a little peek into, you know, the NGA Facebook group where our community is and how helpful they are. Look at all these great bits of advice from people. It's really, really useful. The people in this group are absolutely awesome. I'm so grateful that they're part of our community. Every day they're helping one another and also helping me with, you know, ideas for stuff that we can record and make for you in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this video. We've covered a lot of ground here. I'm sorry if it was a bit overwhelming, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, we gave you something really useful that you could take on board and come back to again and again in the future. It's been a lot of fun putting this together for you, and I hope you like it. I hope it's going to help improve your bar chords. In video 2, we're going to look at a load of extra stuff, and specifically we're going to drill into A-shaped bar chords a bit more, because they are, you know, along with movable E shapes, the movable A shapes, they're the two types of bar chords that guitarists use the most, all the time. So in video 2, we're going to look at that. I'm going to share some more tips and ideas that will improve your bar chord playing. So look for video 2 soon. Thanks for watching. I hope this has helped. I'll see you in the next one.